Good morning, friends. It is good to see you here with us today. It's a full house. Get friendly with the people sitting next to you. If you don't know them, shake their hand. Get to know them. Introduce yourself. With this many folks, there's a good chance you're sitting by somebody you don't know. So welcome. My name is Chris. I'm one of the ministers here at the Burning Church of Christ. We are blessed to have you with us. If you're a guest or a visitor, whatever has brought you in here today, thank you for being here. We're blessed to have you with us. Are we there yet? There's a good chance if you went out of town this summer that you heard that phrase coming from the back seat, or maybe from the passenger seat, or maybe even from the driver's seat. Are we there yet? I don't want to be stuck in this car or this plane or whatever any longer. I'm ready to be there, wherever there is, because there is going to be great. The destination, that's what it's all about. When we get there, that's when the fun's going to start. When we get there, then we're going to be on an adventure. There is the reason we left the house in the first place. I was comfortable and cozy at home. I could go to the kitchen and grab a Dr. Pepper or some Cheetos whenever I wanted to when I was at home. Home was nice, but I left home to go there because there is supposed to be awesome. Someone promised me that if you go there, it's even better. And so this summer, many of us left home to go there. And maybe it took you a little longer than expected. Maybe there were some challenges along the journey. And when those challenges come, when it starts taking a little extra time, that's when the grumbling begins. I need to go to the bathroom. I'm hungry. It smells back here. He won't leave me alone. Did you just miss the exit? What do you mean we're on standby? Are we there yet? I just want to be there already. There is going to be great. So you have this man in Scripture who is at home. He is settled with his family and his life. He is comfortable and he's cozy. And God speaks to him one day and says, I want you to leave home and I want you to go there. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you. And him who dishonors you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. This is the first time that we hear the Lord speaking to Abram. This is the first time that there's mention of the big promise. Father of a great nation, you're going to be a blessing. You're going to have a big family, and even more, all of the families of the earth will be blessed. And we can look back now at all the generations throughout Scripture. You see Abraham who has Isaac, Isaac who has Jacob, Jacob who has 12 sons. One of those sons is Judah, and through Judah, one day Jesus the Messiah will be born. That's that promise being fulfilled. All the families of the earth blessed through Abram. And that sounds great. Let's do it. So step number one, he says, you gotta leave home. Step one, leave home. Go from your country, your kindred, your father's house. Leave what's familiar. Leave what's comfortable. Leave what's safe. Leave the world and the life that you know behind. Why? Because God is making you the promise of there. And there is going to be better. The land that I will show you. This morning, if God were to make you and me a similar offer in our lives, if he was inviting you to leave whatever is comfortable, familiar, safe, wherever you are right now, towards something unknown, but promising that it would be good, how would you respond? And it doesn't have to be where you live. Maybe it's where you work. Maybe it's something about your lifestyle, or your habits, relationships. What if God said, leave here and trust me to take you there? That's a big leap of faith. In the next chapter, Abraham is on that journey. He has accepted the offer, and God speaks up again and reminds him of the same promise. Chapter 13, verse 14. He says, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. So arise and walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. Here it is again, this promise of countless descendants. And with it comes the promise of this land. These two parts of the promise are inseparable from one another. He says, both will be yours. Verse 12 says, Abram is in the land of Canaan. God says, I'm going to give you that place for your offspring forever. Chapter 15, God seals these words with a covenant, an unbreakable oath from God to Abram. Chapter 15, verse 18, he says, on that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your offspring, I give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. It's a covenant. This land is yours. God promises. He just doesn't say when. And just as Abram would be the father of a great nation, it's going to take some time for that all to play out. But here is that promise, sealed with a covenant. There's something special about that place. Genesis 17, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you, and I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojourning, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Now, this last line is supposed to hit hard. Abraham, new name, new identity, the man of promise, a great nation, the land of Canaan, everlasting possession, and I will be their God. This nation and the land, they have a connection with one another. It's all about the people of God. It's not a conquest. It's not an empire. It's a relationship. God says to Abraham, I am giving you these people and I am giving you this place so that they will be my people, and this will be where they come to know me. And now a lot of time passes. I'm going to give you most of Genesis in just a few sentences. Abraham finally has a son, Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. One of those sons, Joseph, is shipped off to Egypt because his big brothers don't like him. But it all works out pretty good for him. So much so that the whole family ends up leaving that land of promise and going to live with Joseph in Egypt. That's a strange twist to the story. God has been promising over and over and over, this place, this place, this place. And then they leave. And God's okay with it. Genesis 46:3, he says, it's okay, Jacob, you can go. Because step one is leave home. And the nation flourishes in Egypt. It's just wild, exponential growth. But a new Pharaoh comes to power who does not regard these Israelites with the same respect that his predecessors had. He sees them as a threat and as a massive, untapped workforce. And so he turns them into slaves. And he kills their sons to control their population growth. But they grow anyway, in number and in strength. And for over 400 years, the Israelites lived there in Egypt. It is a long time since Abraham had been promised this land. It's been a long time since he left home. And one day, there's this guy named Moses. And Moses is watching over a flock of sheep, and he notices a strange sight. It's this bush that's burning, but it's not burning up. And out of the bush, God speaks. Exodus 3, verse 7, the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their suffering, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey. God calls Moses to take his people, Israel, out of oppression and suffering and lead them to the good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey that he had promised to all their forefathers. God never forgets his promises. He made a covenant over that land, and he has every intention of honoring it. And it's time to go. He tells Moses to tell the people, we're leaving here, and we're going there. There is going to be good. And so step one, you gotta leave home. And the Israelites, they march out of Egypt as a free people, and they are headed to this new home, a good and broad land. God promised, and he's been promising for a very long time. And so they leave, but when they leave, they almost immediately start asking, in different words, are we there yet? Why? Because the land that they step into, and they leave Egypt. Egypt is fertile and it's lush. And the land that they step into does not seem like a very good land. You can see this picture. It's dry and it's barren, and it goes on for what seems like forever. They took that leap of faith. They left home. But for a long while, they complain that they wish they could just go back. Exodus 14, verse 11. Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us to bring us out of Egypt? Chapter 16, verse 3. Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Chapter 17, verse 3. Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Numbers chapter 11, verse 4. Oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt that cost nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. Are we there yet? We miss home. It's taking longer than we expected to get where we're going. And it's not easy. You said this land was going to be good. It doesn't seem very good. It's hot, and it's dry, and it's barren, and we're hungry, and we're thirsty, and we're tired. Yeah, we remember the country where we came from. It was cozy and it was familiar. Yeah, we were slaves and they were killing our children. But maybe that was better than dying in the desert. Where is this good land that you promised to Abraham? On our trip to Israel, this is where we started, in the desert, in the wilderness, in the wasteland. And our guide started with this question. Why would God call this a good land? It doesn't look like a good land. And we're hiking through the desert. We're going up these steep cliff faces, walking along long, dusty paths. And there were many times that I answered this question to myself, answering, no, this is not a good land. This picture is from an area called the Wilderness of Zin. It comes up in Numbers chapter 20. It's where Moses is told to speak to a rock and ask for water, but instead he strikes it. And that's how desperate and thirsty these people must have been. You have to ask rocks to give you water. This is the good land that God promised. I have to admit, I would have probably been one of those grumbly Israelites if I'd been in their group. But this morning, I want to offer up a few different answers to that question. And not just to the Israelites, but also to you and to me as we also go through whatever wilderness seasons we find ourselves in. Because God makes us the same offer, right? Leave home and come follow me. Take up your cross and let's go. And I promise I'm going to lead you somewhere good. He promises. It is a covenant. It's one that we celebrate and we remember every single Sunday. Matthew chapter 26, verse 27. This is Jesus. And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." God made you a promise. Leave home. Leave the old and the familiar behind, and I'll take you to a good and a broad land. But sometimes the in-between stinks. It's a wasteland. It's dry and it's hot and it's barren, and we can easily begin to feel like where we came from was better. You miss the old life. Let's go back. This isn't as good as he promised. So here's what I'd say. First, we aren't there yet. Now, they didn't know it, but what was ahead of the Israelites was beautiful. What's ahead is good. Yes, there's a transition period between here and there. And we have to remember that it's a transition. It's just that. It's not permanent. It's temporary. The journey is not the destination. And so when life is changing because you and me have made faithful decisions, remember, the in-between may be hard. But that doesn't mean that the promise isn't still good. It's so easy to see what's right in front of us, and when it's hard, we can freak out and we can panic. But remember, we aren't there yet. God can see further ahead than we can. Second, maybe we're not ready to be there yet. The Israelites weren't ready. They needed many wilderness experiences to learn really who this God was. And when they did finally get to the promised land, they still weren't ready. And they finally reached this good landscape that was lush and fertile and beautiful. And the majority said, no, we can't do it. The challenges ahead are too great. They weren't ready. Now, sometimes we want to run off and we want to seize all the good stuff that God has planned for our future. But in his wisdom, he knows that the right blessing at the wrong time can actually be a curse. The promise ahead is good, but God works on us, and he forms us, and he matures us, and he prepares us to be a people who are ready to responsibly receive his blessings. And what better place to form us than in the wilderness? Now, he has our undivided attention when we're there. We're forced to be patient, to be dependent, and to be content. And third, I think this is what it really all comes down to for me, is this question: what does good really actually mean? The Israelites might have looked at the land ahead of them and been unimpressed, have been disappointed. God, you said this would be a good and broad land flowing with milk and honey. But before they actually saw Canaan, before they realized that it does, it lives up to the hype, the land seemed really awful. But even the desert is good. You might have this sprawling landscape, but just when you need it, a spring bursts forth. Take a look at these two pictures. There you go. These two places are only about 20 minutes away from each other. Good to God does not always mean the same as good to me. I usually want to be surrounded by quantity, but God is all about quality. I want abundance. He wants substance. I want plenty. And God says, how about enough? Remember that promise in Genesis 17 where he says, in this land, I will be their God. God does not put good into our lives so that we can worship the blessings, but instead so that the attention of our hearts and the devotion of our lives would be turned to him. And he knows how easily I can get distracted with the gifts, so much so that I usually forget the giver. I want more and more. And he knows that more might not actually be good for me. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 10, when it's finally time for them to go into the land of Canaan, says, and when the Lord your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to you with great and good cities that you did not build, and houses full of all good things that you did not fill, and cisterns that you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you eat and are full, then take care, lest you forget the Lord, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve. By his name you shall swear. The point of the physical blessings of the land are to draw the spiritual hearts of the people back to God. I think the desert is a part of the good and broad land. It might not always seem that way, because my qualifications for good are often selfish and short-lived and superficial. But God's definition of good isn't just about getting there, but rather every step of the journey along the way, even the unpleasant steps, because we are becoming the people that he knows we can be. So what makes it good? What does that mean, good? It means there is where we will be when we find God. God is what is good. His presence there makes it good. Desert or paradise, God's presence is what makes it good. And over this next several weeks, I'm going to share some of my reflections from our time in Israel this summer. The focus is going to be on God and his people in that place, his faithfulness, his provision, his love, and his glory. But as for today, whether you are in a season of wilderness wandering or promised land joy, God is with you. Just as he always was with Israel, the promise still stands. He wants you to be his, and he wants to be yours. And if you're at the beginning or maybe some point of decision along the way, step one is always the same. You got to leave where you are and surrender to wherever he's leading you next. The beauty is, he only leads us towards somewhere good. If there's any way this church family can help you today, maybe you are in a season of wilderness and it can feel very lonely. It can feel like this isn't good. Why am I doing this? And I tell you, you're not alone. You are surrounded by friends and family. And if there's some way we can support you this morning, you need help, you need prayer, you need conversation, maybe you just need somebody to listen. Maybe you want to read scripture together, or maybe this morning you're ready to put on Christ and baptism and get a fresh start. However we can help you, you can visit with one of us up front or somebody in the back as we stand and sing.